Hi, everyone. We are still seeing some folks trickle in, but there is a lot to discuss today. So I'm going to just get us started with a quick welcome to everyone tuning in, those from the network and those that are joining us just for this special call. My name is Madeline McDonald. I'm the program manager for the Highline Network, and this is our March monthly call. However, we're doing things a little bit differently this month because this call is being hosted by the Building Bridges Across the River and 11th Street Bridge Park team, and is open to the public. So thank you for coming, and thank you to that team for hosting and bringing us all together. Before we kick things off and I turn it over to them, I just want to do a quick intro to the network. Um, for those of you that have not joined one of these network monthly calls before and may be unfamiliar with us, the Highline Network is an initiative of the Highline in New York City, and we are a member-based peer learning group for people across North America that are developing infrastructure reuse spaces and bringing those projects to life. Our members include the 11th Street Bridge Park, the Rail Park in Philadelphia, and so many more. I see some of you on the call, so it's great to see you here today. And these members are all doing amazing work to revitalize spaces, reconnect communities, and spur local economic development in their communities and cities and neighborhoods. So every month we gather to have a conversation about a topic that is relevant to the network. And when Scott and Jessica suggested a presentation on the first year of their Building Strong Communities Technical Assistance Program, this seemed like the perfect platform to do so and to have that conversation. So I want to thank the Building Bridges Across the River team for organizing this and the pilot participants for being here as guests to tell us all a little bit more about their work. We're going to learn about some new infrastructure reuse and revitalized spaces that may be new to the network members on the call. So without further ado, thank you all so much for your time, and I will turn it over to Jessica.
Thank you, Maddie, and thank you for letting us do a small takeover here to share just some of the lessons learned from this project. As Maddie said, my name is Jessica Smith-Lennon, and I'm the Deputy Director of the 11th Street Bridge Park, and it is a project of the nonprofit Building Bridges Across the River located here in Ward 8, Washington, D.C. And so the community that surrounds the park has really helped to shape the features of the park, and it was important to ensure that the people who helped shape the park are also able to enjoy the new civic space once it's built. And since 2015, we have worked to implement community preservation strategies in the areas of affordable housing, workforce development, small business, arts and culture, and health and wellness as well. Over the last decade, this work has truly become a nationwide model and how we can transform spaces without displacing residents, and how these projects can be used as economic drivers for the people who have been here for many decades and years and have heavy roots in the space. And so thanks to the generous support from the Kresge Foundation, our team was able to provide technical support to 5 different civic spaces and recycled infrastructure projects and reclaiming space projects in 5 different cities across the country. And over the last year, they have worked with their individual communities and stakeholders to develop preservation strategies of their own that are relevant to their space. And so today you'll be able to hear from 4 of the projects that participated in the first Building Strong Communities program. And we have Adina Hill from Detroit, Michigan. We have Cal Stokes from Cleveland, Tennessee. Yes, Cleveland, Tennessee is correct. And Nicole McDonald from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And Doris Terrell from Baltimore, Maryland. But before we get started, we're going to kick off with a premiere of a short film that's documenting these efforts specifically in Baltimore. Maddie, would you share the video for us, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The 11th Street Bridge Park is this once in a lifetime opportunity to repurpose an old, aged out federal highway over the Anacostia River here in the nation's capital. The equitable development plan was never part of the original effort, but we heard a much deeper need and desire to think more broadly than the physical infrastructure of the park, because it was really critical to make sure that the tens of thousands of residents that were shaping this park from the beginning are the ones who could benefit from it. The Building Strong Communities Technical Assistance Program was an application process for communities around the country to tell us how they felt like they would benefit from having us assist them growing their own equitable development plan and moving their work forward. We are in the nation's capital. This is an opportunity to really lead for the country. And this is an opportunity to think about these kind of investments in a very different way. Equitable development is development that allows all stakeholders to take part in the benefits of that development. I'm Doris, and I grew up in Baltimore City and on Rutland Avenue in the 1800 block. It was a fun place to be, a safe place to be, and returning to the neighborhood, I was challenged to see my neighborhood looking like a third world country. I was devastated. People are trapped. Why are they living next to abandoned buildings? That's just inhumane. We cannot live in these war zones. Our goal for the Building Strong Communities Technical Assistance Program is to provide a roadmap. Dr. Doris is trying to give her community hope. Her whole aim is to revive, like just bring energy back to the community where families are having a safe space to play, work, and live. 1600 Rutland Avenue had history of, at one point, having family units there. Houses were there. It became toxic. It was demolished. You know, when you look in Iowa and they have like these tall brushes, cornfield, that's what it looks like. Like just tall grass. Even what it was a mess. So we started talking. What could we put here? Started with general community conversation. We're here today because in this Broadway East community, we need you. What would you like to see in this space? Some people wanted just a simple green space. Some people wanted things for adults and children. And we want this to be a destination park, places where people can go. I'd like to see walkways where people can just take a small walk. There's no place for them to go to do that. By also bringing in a landscape designer to capture some of the information. You know, eyes lit up. Wow, we can do all of that in this space. So for me, the vision is a healthy space that will benefit people who want to not only visit, but live in proximity to that space. It's never too early to think about approaching a project in an equitable way. We are not doing this work by ourselves. We need to surround ourselves with allies. We're really excited for your expertise and willingness to come and help us do this. One of the biggest partnerships, I think, is the city agencies. If you have the city support, I think we can make it happen. Another partner is philanthropy, because it's not going to be cheap. Getting the community to trust and believe
is another part of the partnership.
We kept hearing questions like, who is this really for? And how is this going to benefit me? Because in every other example that they'd experienced, it wasn't for them. How do we invest early, intentionally, and most importantly, with a community at the center? Because the last thing we want to do is make this big, beautiful park and unintentionally displace the same residents it's trying to serve, right?
My main question is going to be, how are you going to get the community to engage?
You need to build those early wins, right, too, to build that trust and be consistent. Focus on a 1 mile area around the Rutland parcel. Where are there additional tree planting opportunities? Where are there additional workforce development programs that Living Classrooms are already working on? Bring together the environment, bring together jobs, bring together housing, bring together small businesses, right? So that the community, the residents around in that 1 mile area know that this is for them.
So just telling me you need to activate this space. I need some programming around this space. All right, I can think of that. We've had our national night out. We'll have our jazz night.
The neighborhood, seeing it transform where you actually can have people playing and have an event on it in less than what, 30 to 60 days? Then it's like, oh my gosh, this is really happening for us.
For a long time, I would get a lot of phone calls of like, Scott, tell me the top 3 things I need to do to stop gentrification, right? And respectfully, I would suggest asking a slightly different question, which is how do you engage your local residents to create strategies that work for you? In this first cohort, there are cities with millions of people in the general area to a little tiny town of 25,000. No one has all the answers. But I think the process of engaging your local stakeholders, your city, your residents, your communities of faith, that's the thing that's replicatable. At the end of the day, all of this work is restorative, and we can see that there might be a different way that we can have a rising tide that lifts all boats, not just some boats.
Thank you, Maddie. All right, so we are going to move on to the second portion of this webinar. My name is Anna McCorvey. I am the Senior Equitable Development Manager on the 11th Street Bridge Park team. And I have been very honored to really serve as the point of contact and kind of coordinator of our Building Strong Communities Technical Assistance Program last year and this year. And before I transition to our cities, I want to just give you a little bit of information about the actual technical assistance program and how that process unfolded. As you know, you heard in the video, for a number of years, Scott has been fielding questions about our equitable development plan and visiting sites all around the country, really on an ad hoc basis. And we got an opportunity to formalize this process through the support of the Kresge Foundation. One of the goals of the program, as was also mentioned in the video, is to provide a roadmap to the creation of equitable development strategies. One of the core beliefs of the Bridge Park is that we all shouldn't have to make the same mistakes over and over again, and there's no need to reinvent the wheel. So this process included, it started off with an application that was distributed nationwide. We prioritized organizations that already had a strong community presence and projects that would have significant economic impact to the surrounding community. 5 projects were selected in Detroit, Michigan, Cleveland, Tennessee, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Baltimore, Maryland, and Columbus, Mississippi. And you'll hear from everyone except from our friends in Mississippi today. They couldn't join us today. All of the sites received a visit from at least one member of the Bridge Park team, where we shared our 7-step process that we use to create our strategies. We learned more about their projects, the different hurdles that they were experiencing, and their vision for equitable development for their communities. And we were able to provide some insight on how they could continue to engage their stakeholders. We also made ourselves available to speak with local officials and decision makers when necessary and when needed. And this was to not just show how impactful the work of the Bridge Park has been, but also to show that we are supporting the work in those different cities. We're supporting the work that those organizations are doing. And these are things that they, as city officials and decision makers, should also support. We met with council folks. I even did a podcast in one city. So we really want to show that we are in support of these infrastructure reuse projects and are really excited that the organizations that we're working with are thinking proactively and strategically about how the economic benefit of these projects can be intentionally directed towards the communities that need them. Each of these projects has been unfolding in a number of really different and unique ways. And I will not take up any more of the time for this section, and I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to our program participants. First up, we have Adina Hill, who will be telling you about the project in Detroit.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Adina Hill. I'm Program Officer with the Kresge Foundation. I sit here in Detroit on our Detroit team and wanted to share out a little bit more about the I-375 Reconnecting Communities project. Now, this project has been around for almost 20 years because the highway, it's a 1-mile stretch of highway, is under in disrepair, and the bridges have really unique safety concerns that need to be addressed. So it's been a long time coming for this project. So folks have been engaged around it for a very long time. A few key things that I wanted to lift up, and you can see in the photo here, picture of the highway, but then on the left-hand side, a picture of a community. So the significance of this project and the reason why it's gotten so much attention is because of its storied history. So the project was created in 1964. That's when the freeway was completed. But prior to that, there was a thriving Black community that the highway now runs through. So Black Bottom and Paradise Valley were two neighborhoods that were demolished due to urban renewal, identified as blight in the city, and concerns around slums being a part of that effort to remove that blight in the city back in the late 40s, early 50s. So that urban renewal process started us down this path and on this trajectory. So once the city received funding from fair housing and from the highway infrastructure acts of 1950s, the highway construction started. So it went right through this same area that had been previously demolished. So because of this unique history and this background and similar projects around the country, Kresge took a real interest in this project after it got to a point of receiving some federal support. and a 2021 grant application. So it restarted some of its community engagement. And as a funder, a local funder who's really, our mission is all about advancing economic opportunity in cities, and Detroit being our hometown, we really leaned into this project because we wanted to see reparative principles and practices really lifted up and illustrated in every component of the work, not only the design, how wide and how much it fit the urban fabric, but also into some of the greater impacts. So we really looked at our colleagues in DC, connected with Scott and team, and really start to investigate what they could do and bring to our equitable development efforts. So we decided to go on this journey trying to develop a partnership with the city and MDOT, our local infrastructure group with the state, to develop a partnership where we can get these equitable strategies really embraced by those public partners, but really to hear from the community and really investigate what it is that the community wanted to see. Community was already lifting up that there were some significant gaps in the project and that really this history wasn't being addressed. So that was another really important part of our involvement, is ensuring that there was a reparative process that acknowledged the history, and those that were harmed by this highway initiative really were a part of this planning process to bring about these development strategies that really address the harm and avoid future harm. And just speak to the system of inequality in ways that we can seek to repair that in this project. So I'll stop there.
Um, I'll go ahead. My name's Kyle Stokes. I'm the Community Development Director at City Fields in Cleveland, Tennessee. On this slide is a before and an example of what could be an after of a Whirlpool site, an abandoned manufacturing site that's about 50 acres in our downtown kind of urban core. City Fields got started about 10 years ago working in the neighborhood that is most adjacent to this site. This neighborhood was developed in the 1920s as a sort of mill town that housed a lot of families who worked at these downtown industries. And this Whirlpool site was kind of the last remaining significant one, a big neighborhood anchor. And it was torn down. It closed in 2010 and was torn down about 6 or 7 years ago. It has always been a barrier to connectivity between these neighborhoods east of the tracks, railroad tracks, and the rest of downtown. And now it's that much more of a barrier just psychologically. It's for 6 or 7 years just been torn down and a bunch of rubble of brick. And so our organization does holistic neighborhood development in the neighborhoods surrounding this site. That's our main focus, but we know that so much of the future of these neighborhoods hinges on what happens with this 50 acres. So the image, kind of the rendering, is from a neighborhood master plan, a built environment master plan that we did in one of the neighborhoods in 2018, a design charrette with an urban design firm. And that image sits framed outside of our mayor's office, which I think is a good sign that some of this could be welcomed by the powers that be in our city. And I think our goal has been and continues to be, can we create a sense of expectation amongst neighbors in these neighborhoods that they can and should have a say and feel empowered for their voice to be heard in City Hall and amongst economic development leaders, because I think right now it's just what's going to happen there is what's going to happen, and I don't have a say, I think, is kind of the mentality. And so what we've wanted to do in our work as it relates to this site is generate positive activity in these neighborhoods alongside neighbors. And as the city has acquired this property within the last few months make sure that the neighborhood's perspective is actively present in the conversations. So there's a lot more I could say, but maybe I'll stop there.
Hi, folks. I'm Nicole McDonald. I am with the Friends of the Rail Park. We are an infrastructure reuse project out of Philadelphia. We're transforming 3 miles of historic railway into a park, and in the process, connecting 10 plus neighborhoods. A section of the park is currently opened and is located in Chinatown North, adjacent to Chinatown, and is a community that not only experienced historical disinvestment, but was divided by the Vine Street Expressway. In the early 2000s, a group of neighbors saw that the potential for this abandoned infrastructure in their community, and in 2011, Friends of the Rail Park was incorporated. It was volunteer-based until about 2018, when the first phase and the currently open park, also a proof of concept park, opened. Currently, there are 4 of us working at the rail park, and we are all stewards of the neighbors' initial vision for the space. Our larger mission is to build a bold, transformative, and inclusive public space that connects Philadelphia's residents and visitors to the city and each other. We kind of ended up on this path towards working towards an equitable development plan as a result of the feasibility study done in 2022. And really it became kind of the foundational phase for us prior to physical development. And we're really glad to the folks at 11th Street Bridge Park to kind of support us in this effort, and excited to share more with all of you later on in this call.
Hi, I'm next. I am yeah. Hi, I am Doris, representing the Broadway East neighborhood. So this neighborhood is frequently considered as the black butterfly within the Baltimore city structure. It has a large minority population. It also has a large returning citizen population. We have not had what we would call affordable housing within the last 20 years. And we have an abundance of green spaces that have not been developed. Because of some of those issues, we have environmental issues that impact air quality, create pockets of violence, and the heat index itself can be unbearable for our residents. So as we try to structure green spaces to change what is happening and have an impact on the environment, including air quality, violence reduction, and green spaces for happy spaces for little people and adults, we have tried to develop a park called the Joni Park. That park is being developed to represent one of our other people who has worked hard in the community, to recognize her as an advocate for change. We're enjoying the support that we're getting from Parks and Bridges because we need all the support to create the roadmap that we need to move forward. We are currently trying to raise funding for our project. We do have some funding. We're leaning on others to come in and give us additional funds. Within this space, it's a 2-acre space that used to be a school. The school was abandoned for 20 years. We were finally able to get it demoed about 2 years ago. We now have a landscaping plan for this area, and we also hope it will have a major impact on the flooding that is frequently taking place within the community. So a lot of our homes are basement flooding if our senior or legacy residents don't have what we call sub pumps. This green space will do a lot for us, including how our kids will be impacted. The closest park is 2 miles. So this space becomes extremely important for the little people and our legacy residents who are trying to get out just for a short walk for energy. So we're hopeful that we can learn from Parks and Bridges how to move this forward. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for sharing. It's been really great to hear about you all's project. And we're going to move right into some planned questions. And then the audience, you all will have an opportunity to also ask questions. So please join in the conversation, and we'll do that via raising hands if possible, and being able to come off mute and have a chat and everything. But the first question that I'm going to ask the panel is what motivated you and your organization to reclaim the spaces of your project?
So I can jump in and get us started because there were some things that I wanted to share that I didn't in the intro. So the project 375, once it was awarded federal funds, it kicked kind of the redevelopment of this space into gear. And what was determined as the alternative to this freeway was to do a boulevard concept. So to level out, fill in this sunken highway and create a boulevard for this, once thriving community. Now there would be a new boulevard. And with that would come some access land. So what happens on this land became a very, very big community question in the community. Originally, the project in its full scope had 40 acres of excess land that would be created once the highway was removed. Now we've decided to phase the project so that everything wouldn't be done at once, the costs could be managed, and that the timeline overall could also be managed. But in this first phase of the work, the boulevard would move forward in advance. 8 acres of that land would be made available. So folks still very interested in what happens on that land. And of course, recognizing the history of the place and space, knowing that there was history that we wanted to acknowledge. There was also harm. So there were some opportunities there to think about what we could do to repair that harm in the space that was being made available, but also inviting new opportunities. So we look at this in Detroit as a transformative opportunity. It's in our downtown core. So it has the potential to reconnect a neighborhood to the commercial downtown area. So it's really significant in terms of where it's situated in the city, but also what it means for the community, the folks that were displaced and lost homes and businesses, and what this could represent as an opportunity to rectify some of that. So we stepped in to provide some additional support around technical assistance as a funder, to look at the design, make sure that it was fitting like the urban design context and really truly reconnecting and looking at the street grid. So having technical assistance around that to kind of test some of the assumptions that the state was making and their engineering crew was making about the project that the community still was at odds with. So that was a first like entry point for us to say, hey, can we get some peers into this space and to look at what these assumptions are, to better reflect what the community wants. So that was a first kind of bite at the apple. And then once we also started to get feedback from the community that some of these thoughts around housing and workforce and small business really weren't being addressed in this design process. We wanted to intentionally lift up a process where that information could be collected, culled, prioritized, and for us to really get it properly placed and with some prominence into the framework plan of the for this highway, so that it had some level of visibility and not just like some effort happening in the background, but that it can truly be incorporated in the public partners process around this redevelopment effort, and that they would be thinking holistically about what they would do to dispose of the land, because there were all those questions around it, and then how we incentivize folks to come back and be a part of the redevelopment effort. So many buckets, lots of community recommendations have come out of this process, but the relationship with building strong communities has really helped to try to put some shape to that, again, to get it incorporated in this public effort, and to get some of these assumptions that the public partners were making, really to challenge some of that with what we knew from community and what we were hearing. So I think as a way to advance equity in this space, to ensure that the future reflected that equity mindset and incorporated these reparative practices, was really a strong focus and interest of the foundation.
Thank you. Amazing. Doris and Cal, I think you both came off of mute for that question as well. Doris, did you want to take it as well?
I just like to add this part of the history for this space that we're living with and that we're trying to uplift. It's critical for changing the concept of how people view the area in general. It was a thriving area at one point. It actually was like a steam workers waterfront home space where people were buying their homes for the first time. I lived in this space, and my disappointment in returning, I'm a 30-year educator. Upon retiring and returning to the space, I felt the impact of what happened here, what went wrong. I saw the environmental injustices with just a 10% tree canopy. And then the health factor that says 60% of our children are asthmatic. So when we talk about the disease factors that are directly related to the fact that you don't have appropriate greening in your spaces, it for me says there's a deep challenge on healthcare, how we're managing green spaces if we have them, and are we following any scientific approaches to making life better for people? I found that challenging. I found that to be a burden, and also creating violence, pockets of violence, abandoned buildings, which add to saying this is a space where anything can happen. Who cares? Well, we do care. If the property has been there 20 plus years vacant, you have some vision about what will help that. And if you say to me the violence is taking place around the building, I will be saying, where's your vision to eliminate this? If you also said to me that we don't have any parks within a 2-mile radius, so where's the 6-year-old supposed to ride his or her bike? Where am I supposed to take a walk? It's not happening. So along the racial lines, I was further traumatized to understand that in this era, banking injustices were still taking place. The fact that you have named this place as the Black Butterfly, and you compare that to other communities considered the White L, I'm horrified. This is the United States of America, and I do think we can do better. So we are pushing this forward in the best interests of all human beings. And I'm always open for suggestions on how I should move forward, where I should be looking for funding, and how we can make this better for the next generation. From a scientific perspective, from a criminal justice perspective, and making life better for people in general.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Kyle and Nicole, did you guys want to share what motivated you and your organization to reclaim the space of your project?
I think what motivated our organization at the time is our organization was started to respond to neighborhood concerns around the direction of their neighborhoods. And so kind of at the invitation of them, it kind of forced us to make this significant acreage that overlaps the two neighborhoods we work with a key component of what our work was going to be dedicated to. So it was kind of, in response to neighborhood concerns that motivated us.
I'll say too, our neighbors' initial efforts in this work over 20 years ago are not that dissimilar. There's air quality concerns, displacement pressures, limited open space, lack of tree canopy. So a lot of those were kind of the impetus for the neighbors that wanted to see this abandoned infrastructure turned into a park. I will note, the full vision goes through 10 plus neighborhoods. So each neighborhood has different concerns and kind of different pressures that they're facing. And so a lot of the work through this equitable development planning process has been to identify kind of the shared concerns and shared goals of all of these neighborhoods in order to create like a unified effort and plan for all of these communities.
Wow, yeah, thank you. The next question, and some of you have already kind of touched on this, but what has been the value of the Building Strong Communities program for you and, moving the project forward and connecting with the community? Nicole, you can feel free to jump in. I see you nodding your head.
I was just going to say, 11th Street Bridge Park is really a model example of what intentional park development can look like in the future. And so when we saw the technical assistance program, we were really excited about it, especially because, I think we might, as a project, be a little bit further ahead in some of the equitable development planning process. I'll give all the credit to our executive director, Rebecca, for thinking about this for quite some time. So the technical assistance program coincided with us with our implementation of a Knight Foundation grant to kind of go through this planning process. It felt like such serendipitous timing for us, especially because the Bridge Park is an example, like a tangible example of like a successful planning process. And so being able to showcase that to our partners, our advisory council, and I know Anna had mentioned the elected officials was really just a huge value to us because we were able to kind of present an opportunity for them to talk to both Anna and Scott about like what is possible, what does it look like, what does buy-in look like, and kind of build out a foundational like planning or like the foundation of the planning process to like incorporate the things that the elected official, like listening to the questions people had for Anna and Scott, were super helpful to us to think about how do we talk about investment and community preservation to like the larger community.
I'll jump in quickly. The point at which we entered into this technical assistance relationship was at a time that the project had been placed on pause, and it was like the TA started really, and the pause was for a myriad of reasons, but the chief one that gets lifted up is that community concerns about the project and how it was advancing, where it was going, that it was moving so fast without the adequate amount of input. So in comes TA, like right at the perfect moment when the project was on pause, and we kind of had a chance to get our ducks in a row, really to set a clear vision for how we could incorporate this into the process moving forward. So big kudos for the Building Bridges team being able to step in when you did and provide us with that. Uh, uh, Really the experience from across the country, because Detroiters are really funny in this way, and maybe in other places too, about like, hey, we're not like them. But when you get a large enough sample, then it's like, okay, that's precedent. We can look at that because folks are doing things differently. But it's like, we don't want to be DC, or we're not DC. But if you say we're we are a DC organization that has been working across the country, and we've seen precedent across these different communities and different sizes and different places and different contexts. Then we were able to get more buy-in about the process and potentially how to advance some of the strategies and recommendations that community was lifting up. So it's a little bit about our process with building strong communities.
I'll add to that.
Yeah,
I'm
go ahead,
sorry.
Doris.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think offering the structure needed to move a project forward was a key point for our community. Educating us on the do's and don'ts, looking at what the next steps in planning should be, which are critical points for survival. So that part I greatly appreciate, and we needed that mapping.
For us, so the rendering that was on the slide was from 2018. The site was torn down 2020, 2021. And then the city released like a flyover rendering that included what some leaders locally wanted, which was like a regional sports facility, like to host AAU tournaments and a lot of parking. And that was released in 2024. And when they released that flyover video, we got calls the next day from investors about property that we owned in the neighborhoods, like offering cash. And we were like, oh, this is going to be a problem. And not that we didn't realize it, but what we had proposed based off of what the neighbors were wanting to see at that site, kind of a public regional park, some public space that was, accessible and not a barrier to them. And that was kind of the first sign that it was like, oh, if we don't stay at the table, then something could go there that isn't going to belong to the neighborhoods in a very real way. And so having met Scott and Anna and their team on a trip to DC and being inspired by, really the engagement side of what they were doing, you got a sense that the neighbors, like you didn't have to ask Scott or Anna or their team. You could ask any 10 neighbors what the plan was, what was going to be happening, how it was going to impact where they live, what's going on to prep that. They could have articulated it kind of verbatim, what the Bridge Park team. And so I think what was inspiring to us and what continues to be inspiring as we try to move forward at the table with the city is, can we get neighbors to a point where they can expect to have their voice heard? And that what gets developed there reflects what they're wanting to see.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. And in our last planned question, and then I also have a question for Anna. But can you all talk about your efforts to invest in the nearby neighborhoods to ensure local residents can stay and thrive in place? I think you've all kind of like touched on it, but if you want to dive a little bit deeper into just some of the efforts that you guys either have planned or are already implementing, would love to hear those. Kyle, I see you already off mute. Go ahead and jump in.
Well, we've got a new housing. So we've done affordable home ownership, and in the lifespan of the 10 years we've been in one of the neighborhoods, it was post 2008, and you've got dwindling property values. Kind of a vacuum is left by the closing of this site and then the closing of a neighborhood school. So you lose your neighborhood anchors. And so what's the trajectory of getting to a point of stability, and then what comes after that? And we've had local officials say, well, y'all are done in that neighborhood, like let the market do the rest. And we were like, that's not that's not what we want to do. So now the strategy is like, how do you preserve affordability, like cross income affordability long term? And so we're working with trust neighborhoods to form a MINT, a mixed income neighborhood trust, in the neighborhoods that we work in. So it's like a mixed income real estate portfolio that is scalable, to try to ensure that, the market is going to do what it's going to do, no matter how much we try to curb it. But this is kind of our biggest housing strategy, at least, to ensure that there's a mix of incomes that stabilize the neighborhood, that ensure that there's affordability long term, to ensure that whatever happens with this site, it benefits anyone who lives in these neighborhoods.
And I'll go ahead and jump in about a few things that we've done already and what we're thinking about doing in the future. So I mentioned the technical assistance that we were able to bring to the table. We also conducted had professionals come in and conduct training with the public partners around mobility equity. So some tangibles there. We've revamped one of our premier like community grant making products. And to a focus on cultural heritage to ensure that some of the things that were lifted up about arts and culture could be captured. Folks want to commemorate and memorialize the history through sculpture and murals and placemaking. So this is one of our best opportunities. So we kind of retooled it to be able to fit in the context of this geography. We've also started to try to identify other capital we can bring into the market. We're used to kind of playing this role with CDFI partners, being able to seed their funds to be able to attract other capital. So we are really focused on how some of the so we're certainly waiting for this planning process to really flesh out these prioritized strategies. But it's of course we recognize that capital is going to be needed for future development and business growth and new business activity. So trying to develop a fund and to help create this cultural enterprise in this district. So funding that through an initial grant that'll attract some loan and grant capital to this area, and then seeding conversations around community ownership generally. I think we're doing that in the city at large, but we'll be hosting the focus group conversations around community ownership models because it's come up as a desire of the community is to make sure that there's control over the land. But of course, folks still have questions about what type of model should and could exist in the excess land and beyond in adjacent communities, because there's different typology and all kind of stuff that we need to consider. So we've made a commitment to continuing to kind of host and facilitate those kind of conversations, and working with other implementation partners to bring folks together. So kind of in it for the long haul, which is the plus about being a funder in the geography with a 100-year history, is to make sure that we see this thing all the way through. We're talking about a project that'll last for the next 20, 30 years. So we're kind of putting a stake in the ground around some of these initial efforts. We've invested in some mitigation too that'll happen during construction to ensure that there's monitoring, tracking of what's going on with businesses, and that there's some direct support around communications and signage and the like, but also thinking about ways that we can support and have other funders come to the table around supporting with financial assistance as well.
I'll just add to that conversation for the Broadway East community. We have been successful in creating a community land trust where we're focusing on home ownership and rentals where needed. We're hoping that we can move that forward and grant access to additional funding that is available under what we call the land trust umbrella. So our city does have a pool of funding dedicated to land trust. So within that land trust that we created, we also put in a pocket of 4 developers who are committed to working in the spaces that we've identified we needed. One of those spaces is the current park that we're developing. So in that, we've described how we want to remove all the vacancies within the park space. Yeah. Nice.
I think, we are wrapping up our first phase of community engagement. And so a lot of what we are hearing is, some of the programs that currently exist is how can we expand them and kind of formalize them. I think about the markets that we currently host at the Rail Park as a small business opportunity, and how can, we are looking at developing that into a program that could be around small business growth and incubation, particularly for legacy and immigrant small businesses. So I know that's one area that we are hearing a call for investment in. Additionally, a lot of environmental investment has been requested. One of the things that our team had been working on was Philadelphia has a program called Tree Tenders, where citizens actually take care of trees that are planted in the tree wells in their neighborhood. Chinatown North is a little empty circle of like a neighborhood that doesn't have any tree tenders. I think we might be the only community in Philadelphia that doesn't have them. So the Rail Park is working on, all of the staff are currently tree tenders, and then we are working on creating more tree tenders through our volunteer systems and how we can kind of contribute to the larger neighborhood that way.
Awesome, thanks. And Cal, I want to make sure, did you want to add anything on you all's investments in the nearby neighborhood?
No, just the right now housing, the
Okay,
mixed income
perfect. Yeah,
neighborhood
you
trust.
did.
Yeah.
Perfect, great. Thank you. And Anna, if you're still there, I have a question for you. So are there any lesson learned that you can share for just this? I know this is our first cohort. This is the first time we're kind of doing it in a more formalized way. Like you said, we've had a lot of different calls over the decade of people wanting to have that assistance and being able to actually provide that in a substantial way. This is the first year that the team has had the opportunity to do that. So if you have any lessons learned to share at this time, would love to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we are rolling out the program for this year to add into the cohort 2 additional cities, my lessons learned list continues to grow because things keep coming up, and I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. But I'll share kind of 3 things for this group. One is that when people see our plan, it feels really big. And if we're saying to them, you too will have a plan like this, it can feel just like a lot. So really reiterating that 7-step process for everyone and reframing the creation of a plan like this as really organizing efforts that you likely already have underway and adding in new programming that's, to fill in any gaps that you may see, which we do an asset mapping process, and that is part of that process. Another thing is that everyone isn't starting from the same place. So that means that once our work concludes, everyone won't end in the same place, right? So, and that was kind of for, the Bridge Park team internally, but then also as we are communicating to folks, where we would like to see them or where they would like to see themselves, just being really cognizant of where they're starting out. And lastly, everybody in this last cohort really, wants to connect with the other groups in the cohort. That's one of the benefits of being in a program like this is the idea sharing and the co-learning opportunities, which we really didn't get a chance to do last year, but we are doing this year. So we are convening all of the cities in DC this year for that opportunity. Everybody's projects are really unique, but a lot of the things that placed our communities, our under-resourced communities, in the situations that they're in are very similar across all of these projects, whether it be a highway construction that tore through a neighborhood or a major industry partner that shut down a factory and moved out. We see very similar effects come to light in all these different places. So uh, really lifting up the opportunity for people to come together this year in DC. Really looking forward to doing that.
Thank you, Anna. And now we're at the point where we're going to take questions from the audience. Please use the raise hand feature and we'll be able to unmute you. In the meantime, we do have one question in the Q&A, and it says, can you provide the details for the event in DC?
I'm going to assume that Sam is referring to the convening of the cities in the cohort. So, Samuel, we had 5 cities, 5 organizations represented last year. We're adding 2 new organizations this year. And so a total of 7 organizations are going to be invited to DC to share information about the projects that they're working on. We're going to introduce them to some of our partners, dig a little bit deeper into some of the work that we're doing. But it's really an opportunity for all these different groups to come together and do some idea sharing.
Thank you, Anna. Do we have any raised hands, Q&As? Let's see. One seems pretty, oh, we have a, correct. So this is not a public event. So it would be a great opportunity to connect these other projects to each other. And actually right before we got on, we said this is the first time that everyone in this cohort has actually had the opportunity to meet each other. And so wanting for them to also be able to share their individual lessons learned with each other and also the 2 new cohorts that are joining. I believe the application has closed for this year. Anna, is that accurate for the Building Strong Community Technical Assistance Program?
The application has closed, and we will very, very shortly be announcing who the 2 new cities are.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Samuel. Were there any other questions to the projects or to anyone else on the call? Give it a couple more seconds, but I don't see any. You guys were very thorough in explaining everything. It's awesome.
Yeah, we're always happy to connect with anyone if they have questions after the fact or would like to learn more about what we're doing in Detroit. If you have any suggestions, if you have experience with any other community engagement processes that center around infrastructure, that would be welcome.
We have an anonymous one. Thank you everyone for sharing with us your individual projects and for the 11th Street Bridge Park team for initiating this knowledge sharing. Thank you guys for creating the space. Maddie, I will turn this back over to you and to close out. Thank you once again for letting us take over.
Our pleasure. It was so great to hear about a couple of projects outside of the network and all of the phenomenal work that you're doing. And thank you, Anna, Jessica, and Scott, and all for creating this resource and this opportunity. So it was a pleasure to see you all today. And if there are no other questions, I think we can end the call here. And I thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a great afternoon.